Hey, here's some real facts. Everything in life is better when you sleep well. And in this episode of Healthspan Digest, I had a great interview with Drew Griesel, and we dove into sleep, the quality of sleep, the stages of sleep, and how you can sleep better. Real tips, real action items, as always. And we finish with one realistic thing you can do today to sleep better tonight. So check this out. Hope you enjoy it. Leave a comment and share any tips that you have. What works for you so you can help sleep better, or what isn't working for you? Let us know. We can help you out. Would you like to improve your immune system, cognition, energy level, mental health, physical strength, and your mood? Well, you better have your sleep dial if that's your plan. And I know that's easier said than done. Easier said than done for me. But today, with the help of my guest, Drew Griesel, we are going to share some tips, some science, and as always, we're going to finish with one action item that you can do today or tonight to improve your sleep and reap all of those rewards. So let me give a little bit more of a formal introduction to Drew. First and foremost, Drew is a champion of comprehensive well-being, and he has a pandemic story. I suppose this is what we're calling it these days, a pandemic story, where we kind of assess what's going on. This is via 2020. And what happened for Drew was the creation, the development, the birth of Primal Wellness Coaching. His driving force with Primal Wellness Coaching is fitness, nutrition, wellness, longevity, and biohacking. His coaching provides self-defense training, in structured fitness and nutrition programs, and similar to the things that I do, which I feel like Drew and I have quite a few interesting things that overlap, he has online programs and some virtual private coaching as well. And in addition to his continual pursuit of education and certifications, he also hosts a podcast, the Superhuman Blueprint podcast, which I've digested many episodes of that. So I suggest you give a listen to that. And that platform is where the focus is on health, fitness, wellness facts intertwined with insightful guidance. And all of these links will be in the show notes. Well, Drew, thank you for sharing your morning with us.
My pleasure, Aaron. I'm happy to be here.
So the first most important question is, how well did you sleep last night?
You know what? Oh, where's my phone? I could pull out my
Details.
app and tell you exactly. I can give you my sleep score, but I woke up feeling very rested. Thank you for asking.
Oh, very good. Well, let's start with, how did you get interested in sleep? Like what kind of triggered that specific topic for you?
Yeah, so a little bit of my backstory. So you mentioned all the things that I have some subject matter expertise in, and you mentioned the self defense, and that's kind of my backstory. Is I started in martial arts and self defense, and that kind of led me along the path eventually to fitness, which then led me to wellness. And so as I had clients coming to me, originally through the self-defense gym, but asking if I could help them to get in shape, I'm like, okay, I know how to work out. Let me help you work out. And then through that, I pursued formal education and credentials and whatnot. Then I realized very quickly that just having people engage in a good workout program really was not good enough. Most people come wanting body composition change, right? They want to lose weight or build muscle or whatever. And I realized very quickly that exercise is important. It's a very important part of that, but it is not the only part of that. And it's not even just exercise and nutrition. There's a lot more to it. And really it all came back to like overall wellness and well-being. So it was, how do you feel? How do you feel every day? How do you feel when you wake up? How do you feel throughout the day? How are you going to bed at night? An underlying factor that I found in what influenced people's wellness was sleep. And so I became very, very passionate about people. Well, one, about learning about sleep and just understanding why this is so important, right? I've slept every night or mostly every night of my life and never really, understood the science of what that actually does. And so I pursued learning about sleep, and then of course through that knowledge have made it an integral part of the wellness programming that I do for my clients, because if you don't have good sleep, it is very hard to have good everything else.
So sleep is something I'm very curious of course, besides the fact that we all sleep every night, hopefully. But I think we're all well aware without knowing anything about the science, that not all sleep is equal. And there are some nights when, um, per the clock, I would say I would get a what I think is a reasonable amount of sleep for me, which may be 7 hour ish range, and not always felt as good as, almost waking up a little bit disappointed. Like, oh man, like I should feel great right now,
Yeah.
And even on once in a while, I feel like once a week or so, I can manage to get in like 7.5, like almost touch that 8 hour mark.
Yep.
And most of the times I feel really good, but there are sometimes I'm like just not quite as satisfied with how I feel compared to the duration of time. So can you speak a
Right.
little bit to how not every hour in bed asleep is the same?
Yeah. So I'll share my own guilty secret here. I do not get 7 hours of sleep every night. I do not get 7 hours of sleep most nights. I have two small children. I have a 2 year old and a 5 year old, and the only time that I have to myself ever in my life at this point is before they wake up, and they are both early risers, so I get up pretty early every day. So that also led me along the path of needing to figure out how to optimize my sleep. But if we're just going to go real basic, everyone knows get 8 hours of sleep, right? And that's actually a really good rule of thumb. Like there is such a thing as getting enough sleep, but getting enough sleep and getting good sleep are not the same thing. And so, using myself as an example, I sleep about 6 hours a night, give or take 30 minutes. Last week, as a kind of a post Father's Day gift for me, my wife got me a 90-minute massage. So our masseuse came over, and it's not the feel good kind of massage. It's the I'm really going to find all of your spots that are that are not
You
doing
didn't
well,
sleep
and I'm
through
going
it.
to
You didn't
yeah,
fall
I'm going
asleep
to
during the
stick my
middle.
elbow in them. No, there's no sleeping in those massages, but they're amazing. So I did the massage. I went to the chiropractor right after, and I was very sore. That night, I went to bed at like 8 o'clock. My wife took care of the kids. I just went to bed. I spent, I think, 9 hours in bed that night. My sleep score was terrible
Mm,
because I didn't sleep well, because I was sore. And every
mm,
time I moved, I kind of woke up a little because I was in, a little bit of discomfort. Whereas outside of those factors, on my normal night when I'm in bed for, maybe 6.5 hours, getting about 6 hours of sleep, I sleep very well. I wake up very rested. When I'm looking at the actual metrics of my sleep tracker, my sleep score is usually very good. And so the difference being really just what you do to prepare your body to enter sleep and to stay asleep, um, really plays into how you sleep, and how you sleep is what then impacts how you wake up, right? How do you feel when you wake up, and how do you feel throughout the day? Just because you spent 8+ hours in bed doesn't mean you're going to wake up feeling good and have good energy.
sure. So there are phases of sleep. You want to touch a little bit on those? I think that
Yeah.
we're all well aware of the light sleep, where if there's a little noise and you kind of rustle around a little bit on the one side of things, and then
Right.
there's the dead to the world, where you feel like you're really deep and feel really rested. So you want to touch on
Yep.
some what the differences are?
Yeah. Yeah. So technically, there are two sleep stages, although one of them has three stages within it. So there is NREM and REM, non-rapid eye movement and rapid eye movement sleep. Within NREM, there are three stages, though. So the first stage of your sleep, NREM stage one, is your light sleep. This is maybe the first 5 or 10 minutes of when you're falling asleep. This is where it is very easy to be woken up. This is where you might get startled awake very easily. This is where somehow one of my kids always manages to come into the room and start trying to talk to me when I'm trying to go to sleep. So that's first 5-10 minutes or so. Stage one, NREM. Stage two is your moderate sleep, 15 to 20 minutes after following your light sleep. Um, so this is in these time amounts are rough estimates. It varies very much for everyone and for every sleep situation. This is where you're falling more into sleep, and this is actually the majority of your your progress through the entire sleep cycle will be spent in your moderate sleep. This is really just where your body is relaxing, it's starting to cool down, your brain waves are slowing down. And then after that is your NREM stage 3, which is your deep sleep or delta sleep. And this is the sweet spot right here. So this is your recovery. This is where your body is repairing tissue. You're building your immune system. This is where all of the good physical things are happening that your body gets out of sleep. So when we say get enough sleep, they're largely talking about making it to your deep sleep and staying in your deep sleep for the amount of time that you should be in there. Once you move out of NREM stage 3, then you enter REM sleep, which is this is where you have your real vivid dreams. This is where you actually have the mental and emotional benefits of good sleep. So this is where you have memory consolidation and organization, and this is where you really get the brain reset. So deep sleep is where you get the body reset. This is where you get the brain reset. And all in all, to move through all 4 stages of this cycle is anywhere between hour and a half to a little under 2 hours. It really just depends. So these are the sleep stages, but where people get screwed up is if they have a lot of sleep disruptions. Sometimes they never make it to REM sleep. Some people don't even make it to deep sleep. So they're not getting those benefits of the physical healing, physical rejuvenation, and the mental healing and rejuvenation. You should be going through the entire sleep cycle multiple times a night, which means you enter those stages again and again and again. As you progress through the night, you get less deep sleep and more REM sleep. That's just kind of how it works. But if you keep getting disrupted and you never make it past that moderate sleep, then you get very little of those sleep cycles, those stages of the sleep cycle that work into your night, and then you lose out on those benefits. So that's where we can talk about getting enough sleep versus getting good sleep. I spent 9 hours in bed the other day, but it was very poor sleep. So I looked at my sleep tracker. I got very little deep in REM sleep that night. Like, it was extremely disappointing. But on a night where I spent 6 hours in bed, I get 4 times as much deep in REM sleep as I got that night that I spent 9 hours in bed.
So you actually felt better on more occasions on 6 hours than you did being in bed for 9 hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I want to touch a little bit on that. That's great information, and it's easy to kind of reflect on what the sense of occasionally kind of the dream. Feel like you go through a dream state sometimes at night and kind of wake up and use the restroom and come back in and kind of like jump back in, do it again. But you mentioned your sleep tracker. Tell me about tracking sleep using technology. Maybe what you use, and I know there's a whole lot of things out there now, but how do you
Yeah.
leverage technology for that?
Yeah, and I love it. So with your sleep tracker, sleep trackers exist in many forms. So people have like a smartwatch, your Apple Watch, even a phone. You can do sleep tracking. I use a ring, so I have a smart ring here. So there's the most common one is called the Aura Ring. The one I use is called a Ringcon smart ring, and it has I don't think you can see it on the camera here, but there's some green lights and a little red light in there, and it takes all kinds of measurements from my body. So it's constantly checking my pulse, my heart rate, which is where it really knows about my sleep stages, but it also tracks my heart rate variability. It's a step tracker. So it gives me a lot of data. It's really cool. I love it.
That's crazy. It's so small.
But one thing that it
I
breaks
can get that
down,
data.
I know, it's amazing, and the battery life on this thing is incredible. I only charge it once a week, and Bluetooth turns off, so I don't have to have a Bluetooth signal like blasting through my body all day every day. I just turn Bluetooth on when I actually want to sync it to my app and check my metrics. But it'll show me my time in bed. It will show me my time that I was actually asleep. It'll give me a timeline of the entire night that I was asleep, and show me where I was in each stage, how long I was in each stage. It'll show me all the points that I woke up, and we all wake up multiple times a night. Sometimes it's only for a minute. We don't even know. Sometimes it's, we get up and use the restroom. Sometimes it's because some kid had a bad dream. You got to go handle that. But it shows you, all of your wake ups, so you can see, okay, I was only I was only awake for 10 minutes last night. Cool. Oh, last night I was awake for 40 minutes. That sucks. But it also gives you your heart rate throughout the night. So it's really cool data to be able to see where this data was most helpful to me is as I was kind of experimenting on myself. So I have a whole sleep protocol. I have a program, an online program that I created for my clients because I wanted to just be like, go fix your sleep, and then let's work on a bunch of other things. Anyone has access to it, but that was my original intention. But I in learning about all of these different protocols that I put in the program, I was really able to experiment on myself and see the impact, aside from just feeling the impact by tracking my sleep with the ring and the app. The easiest metric is how do I feel when I wake up and how's my energy throughout the day. But with the data that you can see in the app, that you can actually like really see, okay, there's a difference between today and yesterday in how I slept, and this is the one thing that I did different.
That's interesting. So that's great. And so I use a device as well. I tried the Apple Watch for a while, then really like sleeping with the watch on. I use the Whoop
Yeah.
right now.
Okay.
I'm tempted to try other stuff for no other reason than just sort of experimenting and being my own
Yeah.
lab
This
rat in a
is
sense.
I'm all I yeah I don't do the watch. This is the fourth smart ring that I've tried.
Well,
So I tried the Aura Ring. The Aura Ring is really good. I just don't like that it's a subscription service, so you got to
yeah.
pay money
Mm-hmm.
monthly to use it, even though you already bought the ring. And then I've tried three other non-subscription smart rings, and this is the one that I settled on as my favorite.
So let's dive in a little bit deeper to that. So I think one of the challenges that I see with um, the pros and cons of getting so much data, and I feel like every now we're in the AI era, I suppose. So there's always more information, more data. Now that we're like doing tracking
Yeah.
our own biometrics all the time. I mean, I'm waiting for an app that just sort of reads out what's on my mind at this point because it's so amazing, but it's easy to be overwhelmed. And so for not being a sleep expert, somebody goes out, they get an Aura ring or they get a ring, they get a where they probably already have a device that does all this, whether they know it or not. Most people are a smartphone even. They go to bed, they wake up and they see numbers. They see a graph. They see so many minutes or percentage in REM sleep or light sleep. Can you tell a little bit about
Hmm.
on the days that you perhaps wake up and you realize you didn't sleep quite as well. You don't feel quite as
Yeah.
well. And then you look at your data. How do you assess, okay, what happened? What's the autopsy on that last night's sleep? Like what did I not do well? Or can you typically do you have clues that will give you a clear direction on I know what I need to change or to adjust?
So I usually know in advance if I'm putting myself at risk of having a bad night of sleep. So when I wake up and I did have a bad night of sleep or didn't have good sleep, I usually already know why. And here's why. And this is because I have so much attention on this. I have a routine. I have a routine in the morning. I have a routine throughout the day, and I have a routine at night. And many aspects of this routine are geared towards having a good night of sleep. And so, because it's a routine, I know when I'm not following my routine, which means I know if my routine is to stop drinking coffee at noon and I have a cup of coffee at 2:30, I know that I'm putting myself at risk for having maybe slightly poorer sleep. If my routine is to stop looking at screens of any sort 1 or 2 hours before bed, and I I get sucked into something up until just before bed, I know that I'm putting myself at risk. And so I usually, I'll see the numbers in the morning, and I'll be like, "Yep, I I, I saw
I saw
that
it
coming."
coming. Yeah.
Yeah. So for people that don't have a routine, it's really hard, right? It's really hard to be able to tie that back. You really just have to spend time. You have to know like what are sleep disruptors, what are things that cause you to not have that good sleep, and where did you deviate from that? Based,
Mhm.
aside from how you normally do things. The nice thing about the app, and I think pretty much all of them do this, all the different devices, they give you a sleep score. So even if you don't understand all the numbers, it just gives you one number to look at. So
Right.
your sleep score last night was 91 out of 100. Cool, that's pretty good. Your sleep score was 60. Oh, that sucks.
Mm-hmm. Then you can look back and say, okay, what was different, right? But
Yeah.
I think you're like me in the sense that I mean, data is great. I think sometimes it's easy for you know people to maybe be a little bit too hard on themselves, especially initially trying to create some healthy habits or healthy lifestyle. And whether it's the sleep score or the scale or what I can lift in the gym or whatever that is, like
Yeah.
it's like just get data, like just get
Yeah.
information, and then we can say, okay, with enough information, with enough data, we can start being reflective and changing reasonable things, which is also a tough sell in our culture because we want the amazing
Yeah.
sleep, amazing body, perfect nutrition, and amazing energy now. But it sounds like the value of collecting this data is doing it over time
Yeah.
and
And
then
there's
being
conflicting schools of thought here. Like on the one hand, you can totally judge your sleep by just how do you feel. How do you feel when you wake up in the morning? How do you feel
sure,
throughout the day? But for people that have never had good sleep habits, their perception of what's normal might not be what is their potential. And so when you ask them how'd you sleep, if they had a normal night of sleep and their normal night is not very good, then they're like, yeah, it was fine. But then they get this device and they're like, my sleep score sucks every night. So maybe it actually could be better.
yeah, I hear people who self describe themselves as I'm not a good sleeper,
Yeah,
and it's hard not to want to say, well, let's dissect that. Maybe why are you not a good sleeper? And I know it's sort of this vicious cycle. I have friends that are not good sleepers who need to
mm-hmm.
have a cup of coffee at 5 p.m. to get into the last half of the day. And to me, it's like, wow, like I would not sleep, like probably similar to you, like by my cutoff's typically around 10 or 11 in the morning. Like I,
Yeah,
before that, I'll have as much coffee as I want. But at that point, hard stop, I can't do it because I know. And I get sucked in, once in a while. Like I'll get sucked in and be like, oh, it's a whatever. It's the right situation. I find myself sipping coffee, like, oh, wow, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And like you, I'm probably going to regret this around 2 a.m. when I wake up or whatever it
yeah,
is. Let's talk a little bit about some real, actionable items. Like what are some, I think the term sleep hygiene, hear about the routine, the habits. What are some
yeah.
things if somebody is trying to improve their sleep quality, or maybe they self describe themselves as not a good sleeper? What are some real things that they could perhaps explore to improve their sleep?
Yeah. So our body's sleep wake cycle. So for those of us that have a regular job and we just kind of we do similar things every day, we have a sleep cycle, right? We're used to going to bed around somewhere within the sphere of the same time every night, give or take, I don't know, an hour and a half. Waking up, same thing, waking up around the same time every day. Our body has a sleep wake cycle. At its most primal state, it's intended for our sleep wake cycle to be linked to light. So, we naturally get more tired when it becomes dark out, and we naturally start to wake up when it's light out. Um, and although we have moved away from needing to form our day around light because we have all these beautiful lights that we can just turn on everywhere and make them as bright as we need them to be and simulate daylight at the middle of the night if we need to, our body still at its most primal state is linked to the sun. That's not just like me wanting to get all ancestral and stuff. Like there's a hormonal connection within our body. So it's called the circadian rhythm. It's our body's association with producing hormones that aid us in either being awake and alert or aid us in becoming sleepy and falling and staying asleep. So melatonin everyone knows about melatonin. It's the sleep hormone. A lot of people only know about melatonin in that you can go get a melatonin supplement and it will help you sleep. However, melatonin is naturally produced in the body, and it's naturally produced by the brain and the brain's awareness of the your sleep wake cycle. So one of the best things that you can do to get yourself ready for the day and to get yourself ready for sleep at night is intentionally observe the light in the morning. So when you wake up, just go look at the light outside. It doesn't matter if it's cloudy, there's still light. So just look at the light, be aware that it's there. Acknowledging it will actually trigger your brain to know that it's time to wake up and start producing hormones that will get you going for the day. Same thing when it starts to get dark out. Observe it's getting dark, and your brain will actually start to trigger the release of melatonin, which will then prime you for sleep. Even if you're not going to sleep for several hours, you got to prime your body for sleep. So just observing the rising and setting of the sun, it's such an easy thing. It's free, and it does wonders. It's not going to do wonders for you the first day that you try it, but if you do it every day for several weeks, it will get your body to in sync with that circadian rhythm of the sunrise and the sunset.
Funny, it
So that's a really
sounds
easy one.
so simple, yet
Yeah,
but it takes intention. Right?
it does. It takes intent. That's the only thing, right? It's very easy to never notice that the sun is going down. Um,
Right.
but
If you're staring at the TV
if
or a screen in front of you or something like
yeah,
that.
exactly. And on the subject of light, it's very easy to disrupt that evening brain reset of telling your brain that it's getting dark and it's time to start producing melatonin because one, we are usually going indoors somewhere and we flood our indoor space with bright lights. Two, we're looking at screens, phone, television, computer, whatever, and we are blasting ourselves with blue light from these devices. And all of these things prevent your brain from entering into that knowledge that it's time to start to prepare the body for sleep. And so you will disrupt your natural production of melatonin by immersing yourself in light and staring at light. So other things you can do are, if you have dimmer lights in your house, cool, like just dim the lights a bit. If not, then maybe have some lights with lower wattage bulbs and use those lights as the evening progresses. Also on your phone, I'm not sure about computers, but definitely on your phone, there are settings that you can reduce the amount of blue light that comes out of them. So you can set that to turn on, 2 or 3 hours before you would intend to be going to bed every night, so that you reduce the amount of blue light coming out of your phone. Honestly, the best thing you can do is just stop looking at screens an hour or two before bed, which is unfathomable for most people these days.
Is there an app for that?
Um, but that's really like, if you can just not be blasting your eyeballs with light, then it's going to be doing wonders for your brain to prepare your body to fall asleep and to stay asleep.
Well, so far so good. I feel like I'm like listening to you and giving myself a sleep prep score, perhaps this is.
Yeah,
So in a sense, follow the light,
follow the
while it's
light.
up,
Yep, yep,
look at it. And when it's time to, literally it's getting darker, then, be aware of that. Don't blast light in your face. Those are huge things.
yep.
And then that brings us a little bit to, or if we can kind of pivot a little bit and talk about meal times and nutrition. Talked about
Yep.
coffee. Big meal before bed is kind of a no-no.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yes,
Was there a
that is correct.
ballpark on like when you would suggest maybe kind of like wrapping up your food intake, calorie intake before bed?
Yeah, ideally, 3 hours before bed is when you've completed your last big meal. At least 3 hours before bed. And, some people can't get by without a snack in that space, which is fine. But keep it light, right? Some fruit, some yogurt, nothing real heavy, not a whole bunch of carbohydrates. Cookies or whatever, chips. But yeah, you should be concluding your last meal several hours before bed. At least two, three is better, and that is because there's a lot going on inside your body to process the meal that you just had, right? And so if your body is focused on working its GI tract, then it is not focused on priming you for sleep, and it is not focused on you staying asleep.
And for some people I know struggle with waking up in the middle of the night, plus or minus, from the quality of their preparation and their, sleep routine.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody wakes up in the middle of the night and, toss and turn. And I've been guilty of this at times where my brain kind of starts to turn on and I decided now's the time to solve all my problems at 2 in the morning when I would really just love another couple hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Is that just kind of a head game in that situation? Or, I've heard people say, get up and have some tea or start reading a book, or which I've never done. I've just, for me, it's like I'm defiant. I'm like, I'm going to stay in this bed and I will, lie here whether I like it or not, with my,
Yeah.
pretend to sleep basically like a kid.
I'm the same way as you. And yeah, so sleep disruption, there's all kinds of different reasons that you might have sleep disruption, right? One, it might just be that your sleep environment isn't primed for you to stay asleep, right? If you have a lot of noise that comes through to your sleep environment, that can be very disruptive. if you have light that's coming in. Talk about light, not just managing the light that is around you leading up to bed, but a lot of us sleep in a space that is, maybe we may not even realize it, but it's very bright. Alarm clocks, they shine light. And we have all these devices, my computer, my fan, my air purifier, everything seems to have this little tiny LED light on it.
Yeah.
But if you pay attention, if you attempt to have pitch black in a room, you might notice that this little tiny LED light actually lights up an entire wall. Like in my kids' rooms, I take black electric tape and I cut out squares and I just stick it over all these LED lights, because if I don't, it seems like there's a night light on in there.
Yeah.
So, one, just having a sleep environment that's conducive to not telling your brain it's getting light out if you happen to come out of your sleep. Blackout curtains are great as well. Also, using things like white noise is good for sleep. Even there's different wavelengths of noise. So even there's like brown noise and pink noise. Those are also supposed to be really good for sleep as well. Mm-hmm. But some of it ties back to, how did you prepare yourself to have good sleep, right? So, how much mental stimulation did you have leading up to bed? Coffee. So, good for you. You wrap up your coffee early. For people that are drinking coffee late, some people can still fall asleep. They can drink a cup of coffee and fall asleep, but it severely disrupts their quality of sleep and their ability to go through the sleep cycle. And then also, that's a stimulant, right? Caffeine has a 6 to 8 hour half-life. So even 6 to 8 hours after you had that caffeinated beverage, it's at half strength in your system. And what does it do? It stimulates you mentally. So you wake up and all of a sudden you're thinking. Also, things like, it's really important to be well hydrated throughout the day, but it's also helpful to wrap that up 1 or 2 hours before bedtime. Go pee one last time before bed, and hopefully you don't have to get up and use the toilet multiple times a night, because that's also an easy way to just kind of reset. If you're actually getting out of bed and moving around, it's easy for your body to be like, all right, well, what's going on here? Maybe it's time to wake up.
For sure. Well, I think that the summary of a lot of these comes to habits. Really, it's like creating the routine that leans towards being non-negotiable. I mean, real life happens, right, of course, but I mean, I think I'm like you in the sense of, because of my schedule, there are at least 3 days a week that my alarm is, depending on what's going on, between 4 and 4:30 in the morning, and I get up and I go to the gym. It is still dark out.
Yeah.
And so, once I get to, I go to the gym, and then, the sun starts to kind of, we're recording this in the summer. So this is when the days are long, which is great. It's unless you're living, up in the far, far north at 4 a.m., it's still pretty damn dark out. But then, catching the light when it does, does start to rise. But that also means, on the flip side, come evening time, or what some people would probably consider late afternoon, like, I have to start kind of shutting things down a little bit. And that means, this time of year where it's still light out at 8 p.m., 8:30, even 9 is still a little bit of light. And I am sadly, like, pulling the shades, and we've got the blinds, and we put shades over top of that. And there is no light in our room at all. And I got to give a shout out to my wife, who, when we travel, and she's traveled a lot for work, that we get into a hotel room, and it is like finding blankets to cover up. There's little green lights or red lights, or whether it's a fire alarm or everything. It's like, man, you don't realize, which is such a shame, because typically in a hotel, their curtains are often like nice and thick, and like those are blackout. Then you've got like this like light show going on inside, which,
I'm telling you, just bring a roll of electric tape.
Yeah, that's probably, that's got to be, pack that with my socks and underwear next time. And then that leads to, getting into bed before I plan on falling asleep. So I feel like I need some kind of wind down time, and good words of wisdom is try to get our eyes away from the screen as soon as possible, and perhaps pick up a book or whatever that is. And temperature, so cooler is better.
The two things we didn't really talk about would be temperature and movement.
Yeah. So temperature is there an ideal temperature, or is it just like cooler is
Yeah, I mean it's within the like 65 to 68 degree range Fahrenheit,
Hmm.
which surprises a lot of people because a lot of people are like, oh, it's
It's chilly.
cold. I'm gonna have a hard time falling asleep when it's cold. Crank up that heat. Um, but your body is actually made to fall asleep and stay asleep in a cooler environment.
A little
Um,
hibernation of sorts.
yeah, exactly. And it will naturally cool on its own in the sleep stages, particularly in deep sleep. But if you're in a very warm environment, then it will have a hard time doing that. It may not cool to the degree that you really get the most out of those sleep stages. Where I think about I've been in places where it's just really hot. Either I can't control the temperature, or I'm with someone that wants it really hot, and I never sleep well when it's
Hmm.
hot. I just don't sleep well.
Yeah, yeah. And touch on movement a
Nate,
little bit.
yep, yep. So movement is. I mean, think about you have a killer workout today. You're probably going to sleep good tonight, right? Everyone just kind of knows that, right? Even for parents. So I want my kid to sleep good, so I'm going to take him to the park and let him run around for
Right.
3 hours.
Uh-huh. Right.
So it does help to move your body throughout the day. The easiest way to do that, for people that don't do workouts, is just move, just walk, just go for walks, just stay on your feet. If you have a sit stand desk, stand, don't sit. Um, Also a nice hack for burning extra calories too. But it makes a huge difference to your ability to fall asleep in particular if you get enough movement throughout the day and if you allow your body to reach a certain level of exhaustion. It doesn't need to be high, but there should be something, right? If you spend all day on the couch and then you move, or your office chair, and then you move to the bed, like there's not a lot of difference there. Like your
Hmm.
body's not going to know that now it's time to relax.
Yeah. Your body thinks you've been relaxing actually for
Yeah,
a lot
exactly.
of the day. Yeah.
Now you should wrap up that last intense exercise a couple hours before bed because you need to give your heart rate time to slow back down, your body time to come out of that state of high intensity exercise. But if you're just going for walks, then by all means, take a walk. I love pre bedtime walks. They're great.
Hmm. Yeah. The time between dinner and bed is the perfect time to go outside for,
Hmm.
digestion, which we won't get into, but like even great for digestion as
Right.
well as sleep and just sort of like it's a nice signal, especially if that becomes part of the routine.
Yep.
You can certainly adapt like your physiology will just say, okay, this is the shutdown process a few hours before bed still, but it's like you're leading right into like that sweet spot of sleep.
For people that have been paying attention, we've been talking about all these things that are good for sleep, but we've also been dropping comments about how it's good for this and it's good for that. So if you do these things that are good for one thing, chances are they're good for a lot of things. So you start doing the right things, and like all of these things just get better. It's so cool.
Yeah, this is of course like we speak in the same things. The term I use a lot is healthspan, and it is it is sleep, nutrition, and mental well being, and it's like these little action items you may think like, oh, this is great for sleep. Actually, it's also good for nutrition. Oh, it's actually good for cognition. Oh, it's actually good for balance. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
like we're kind of dealing with a, I don't know, finite is a right word, but at least a very well defined toolbox of things that if you use
Yep.
these tools and not get distracted by the latest craze or the fad that kind of comes and goes, and if you just stick to the fundamentals and you create a routine around those, you kind of take care of most things.
Yep.
But it's integrating that into your life, and that's who you make sure that is who you are, who you become, or who you're becoming and pursuing. It doesn't sell very well because it's not a pill bottle and it's not a quick fix,
I
but
know.
there is something beautiful about kind of having the sense of control. And I, like you were saying earlier, that if you do X during the day, your sleep's going to be affected one way or the other. And it's nice because you have empowerment. You can make these decisions and then know. And certainly there are times when, hey man, if it's the vibe is right, I want to have a cup of coffee at noon. it better be a really good cup of coffee, make it really
Yeah.
worth it. But it's okay. But I'm going to be thoughtful and do it, and not wake up tomorrow and think, man, I don't know what happened. It's like, no, man,
Right.
you don't have that luxury. Let's just be mindful of that
Mm-hmm.
and own it. But Drew, that brings us to what I like to do on all of my episodes, and really come down to one thing the listeners could do today or tonight to extend their health span. We've talked about how sleep is an integral part of that. Is there a
Yep.
one thing suggestion that comes to mind for those people that want to get a really good night's sleep tonight?
There is, and you pretty much just said it actually. And so we talk about, for parents, we have so much attention on our babies and our children's sleep routine, because we are very much tied to how well they sleep. Our happiness and sanity is tied to how well our child sleeps. But for us as individuals, as adults, sometimes we move away from that. We forget that. And so the one thing that I would say is just have a routine. Everyone has a routine, but know what your routine is. Have a routine and know what that routine is. That way you can tie back how you sleep to your routine, right? Like Aaron just said, if your routine does not involve having that noon cup of coffee and you had that noon cup of coffee, now you know, because you have a routine, you know what your routine is, and you know that was outside your routine, so you can tie it back to that. So that's the main thing. You can incorporate all these other things as ways to experiment with sleeping better. But if there's one thing that you should be doing, it should just be having and knowing what your routine is for sleep.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that with that routine, that's when you can really get the most out of potentially collecting the data of a device that you're seeing your sleep scores in the day. You can kind of tie that back to what your routine is, and really see the effect of making kind of some small changes, which are you're more likely to follow through with small changes and not do a wholesale, you know, change everything dramatically right now.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Little changes here and there, they add up. Absolutely. So my one thing is have a sleep routine, and just know what that is. But the other thing I would say is then experiment, right? Experiment with your caffeine, with not eating so late, with moving a little bit more, or whatever, and just observe how that impacted your sleep. Whether you have a tracker or you're just using the how do I feel method, that method is still plenty good.
for sure. Yeah, it's getting us this far in humanity up until
Right.
very recently, right?
Yep.
What was life before wearables? Well, it was around for a while. Well, let's talk briefly about Primal Wellness Coaching and the Superhuman Blueprint podcast, which I will link up in the show notes. But you also have a sleep program. Can you give us a snapshot of what that is about?
Yeah. So I have a program called Hack Your Sleep. It's a very brief program. Honestly, it goes through most of the things that we just spoke about. There's a few other things in there, but it's just like I said. I originally created it for my clients, right? And like, okay, we're going to start working together. Here's this online program. You're going to go through it. You're going to work on your sleep, and we're going to talk about it as you go. Um, so I made it available to anyone. So I have a commercial that I run on my podcast. Anyone that's listening can go and access the program for free, because I just want people to sleep better. So I will extend the same offer to your listeners as well. If you just go to hackyoursleep.net, and use code Superhuman, it will still require you to input a payment information, but it won't actually charge you anything. So use code Superhuman at hackyoursleep.net. You can get the Hack Your Sleep program. That way, if you weren't taking copious notes for my conversation with Aaron today, it's all in there, plus a few more things. But it's broken down pretty simply. You can read through the entire program in 20-30 minutes. So it's very simple. So that's something that I offer. Primal Wellness Coaching. So yeah, like Aaron said in the intro, I do one-on-one virtual coaching, and then I have a 10-week wellness reset protocol, also called the Superhuman Blueprint, that I run people through. So I named my podcast after that protocol, and that's sleep and a whole bunch of other things that people can do to optimize their life in general. It's basically all the things you can do to be the best version of yourself. It's pretty cool. But yeah, my podcast, the podcast is fairly new, so I just started at the beginning of this year, and it's been so much fun. I'm having a lot of fun with it. So I've been talking to people with nuanced expertise in various aspects of fitness, health, wellness, martial artists, self-defense people, even just like life optimization. I spoke to a woman who's a professional speaker coach. Right? It's not really tied to fitness or nutrition or anything, but her story is really good of how she became kind of the best version of herself in her career, and she tied in things like how she dialed in her fitness and nutrition to support becoming that best version of herself, which then led to her having her dream career. So yeah, just I talk to a lot of people, and it's just a lot of fun because there's so many people that know so much more than I do about so many things that are really helpful for other people to know about.
Yeah, I think the joy of the podcast of doing podcasting is you get to be curious and engage in deeper conversations and with interesting people like yourself. Yeah, it's a fun passion, fun path to be going down. So so anything self optimization, totally on board with. One thing I always think about when I'm kind of thinking deeply about the ideal client and the people that we type of people that we would like to work with. It's people who really feel like they haven't reached their potential, or we help them reach their potential and whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I will come back to the idea of habits and routines. So I think that
Yeah.
is that's the building blocks of who we all are. And we all may want to do or say or be a certain way, but it really comes down to what are you actually doing, and
Yeah.
having the routine and having habits. It takes effort and time to develop these, whether it's sleep or otherwise. But once you have it, it's pretty easy. That's the secret, right? Like once you have a routine, and it just sort of happens. These things happen
Yeah.
because you've taken time to develop it. And I think that to cut yourself some slack, if you feel like your sleep is disorganized in this case, and there may be several things to work on, it's okay to take days and weeks and months to fine tune these things.
Yeah.
And you are worth the investment. This is we're talking about you and your longevity and your health span and your lifespan and all the things in life, life itself. It's okay for it to take months to kind of or longer to fine tune, but just kind of keeping in
Mm-hmm.
that pursuit is where it's at. And if you can kind of do like what Drew and I do and make ourselves like the exhibit A and kind of tinker and enjoy the being the in the laboratory of life,
Yeah.
it makes it all that much easier, more engaging.
Yeah. That self experimentation. I don't like to tell someone to do something that I haven't at least tried for myself. It doesn't mean if something works for me, it doesn't mean it'll work for you, and vice versa. But it's always good to try,
one Hundred
and good
percent.
to know the research as well.
Yes, 100%. All right, Drew. Well, thank you for taking the time to join us today. I will have all the links that we talked about in our show notes. If you are listening on various podcast platforms, please subscribe to this podcast. And you can also find this on YouTube if you're not already watching on YouTube. So please subscribe to that channel as well. And again, I will have all of Drew's links in the show notes. So subscribe to his stuff, give it a listen. I listen to it. It's great stuff. So thanks for your time, Drew.
Thanks, Aaron. It's been a pleasure.
All right, we'll see you.
All right.